Jeff, what is the Holy Spirit saying to the church? What is the Advent message for 2020 in the midst of this pandemic, a crazy, crazy year? What is God saying to the church?
Well, Tom, a number of years ago, I was actually a published author. I was writing for InterVarsity and Nav Press. I was traveling the country. I was on a trajectory that looked like this. And God called me to get off of that trajectory. And I did. I came to a small town. I've been here for 24 years. Back in those days, if you would have talked to me, I had all the answers. I knew what people needed to succeed. I knew what steps they needed to go through. I was writing on leadership. I was one of the early small group in the church adopters. And I thought I had the answers. And then I went through a really dark time about 25 years ago. And that's when I wrote the one book that will never be published that is actually the most important I've ever written. And it's called Discovering Who I Am in Israel's Desert. One of the things I learned is that when you go through a desert time, it's something you would never choose for yourself. Think about that in 2020. Would anybody choose this? Would anybody say, I want to find myself in the midst of a dark, isolating time? No, of course not. So clearly, God has brought me to a place I don't want to be, like Israel for 40 years. Think about that, 40 years in a desert. So I began during that time because I was a person back then who would have said, look, if you want it, go for it. Name it, claim it. And then I thought, you're such a hypocrite because you're struggling. Nothing is going right for you. And so I went back into the desert writings of Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers, and I realized that God put them there because he wanted them to learn some deep spiritual lessons. What I would say to the church right now is that we didn't choose to be here. We don't want to be here. We want to get out. That's the definition to me of a desert. God has brought us here because he wants to teach us some deep spiritual lessons. There's a book that I'm working through right now called The J Curve. My wife read it first. I didn't want to read it. I thought actually the title of the book was kind of dumb. So why would you read a book called The J Curve? It is making the same point. Dying with Christ, being raised with Christ. I would recommend that anybody out there read that book while we go through this pandemic, before we get through it, so you don't miss what God has to say to us.
That precious word, God breathes life into that and brings us hope to take advantage of this time. My brother, thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Faith and Family channel. Thank you for the boldness with which you are preaching the gospel on that channel, in your congregation, and around the world. Thank you for the example that God is setting through you.